In this tutorial, I'm going to talk about completing the square and finding the vertex. I'm going to work on this equation, but I'm also going to show you briefly some other equations as well, how to find the vertex for those. Now, let's imagine I have the equation x squared minus 6x plus 5 is equal to 0. The value in front of the x squared is actually 1, and I will show you later what to do if it's not 1. And this is the graph of the equation. And that little dot there is the vertex, and there's an x and y value for that vertex. The x is that distance there, and the y is that distance there. It turns out the x distance is 1/2 of whatever's in that front of that x. So in this case it's 3 because half of 6 is 3. And since it's a -6, you're on the right side of the y-axis, so it makes it a positive 3. So to find the y value, which is that distance there, I just take that 3 and put it into that equation. So I have 6 times 3 plus 5. 3 squared is 9. -6 times 3 is -18 plus 5. 9 minus 18 is -9 plus 5. Bring the 5 down right there. Is equal to -4. And that is my y value. So my vertex is 3, -4. X is equal to 3 and y is equal to -4. Now I will complete the square. So I want to get the 5 to the other side of the equation. So to do that, I subtract 5 from both sides of the equation. Those 5's cancel out. So I have x squared minus 6x is equal to -5. I'll make a little box here to work in for completing the square. I'm going to take that 6 and work on it. So I take 1/2 times 6, which is equal to 3. And by the way, it's the same 3 as I used in the vertex example just previously. And now I take that 3 and I square it, and that equals to 9. I take that 9 and add it to both sides of the equation. This gives me x squared minus 6x plus 9. -5 plus 9 is equal to plus 4. I don't use the plus sign. Now I'm going to solve for this equation. I can easily factor this. It's x minus 3 times x minus 3. It factors even. All completing the square always factors even. And this is equal to 4. By the way, that 3 there, it's the same as that 3 there, by the way. Anyway, I rewrite this as x minus 3 squared is equal to 4. I take the square root of both sides of the equation, which I get x minus 3 is equal to plus or minus 2. The square root of 4 is plus or minus 2 because 2 squared is 4, and also -2 squared is 4. So it's plus or minus 2. In this case. Now I'm going to take this equation and I'm going to solve for x. So the first thing I do is I separate it into 2 different equations like this. I add 3 to both sides of the equation, which gives me, those 3's cancel out, which I have now x is equal to 5. I add 3 to this equation, both sides, and now that gives me, again, those 3's cancel out, sorry about that, x is equal to 1. So now, if I go back to where I started, and I draw my graph back in, these are the 2 points, the 2 x values where it crosses, the graph crosses the y-axis. It crosses that when x is 1, and also when x is 5. The vertex is when x is 3, and y is -4. Now let's imagine I have a different equation, x squared plus 4x plus 3. Again, the value in front of that x squared is 1. The graph looks like this, and the vertex is there, and there's some point, some x, y value that represents that point. I divide 4 by 2, which is equal to 2. 4 divided by 2 is equal to 2. And this time it's a -2 because I'm on the left side of the y-axis. And notice that I have a plus sign in front of that 4 also. So now, I take that negative 2 and plug it into the equation. And that will give me my y value. 2 squared is 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8, plus 3. 4 minus 8 is negative 4, and again, plus 3. This gives me a value of negative 1, and that is my vertex. I can even find the vertex when the graph doesn't cross the y-axis and there's no solutions to the problem. I do the same thing. I look at that. I see that it's a 4. It's a plus 4, so I know my vertex is negative 2. So I take negative 2 squared plus 4 times negative 2 plus 6 to get my y value. So that's 4 minus 8 plus 6, which is negative 4 plus 6, which gives me 2. So my vertex is negative 2, 2. Last example I'll look at is what happens when you have an equation like this one where the value is 2 and not a 1 or something else. What you do is you divide the whole equation by whatever that value is. In this case it's 2. Divide everything by 2. Even the 0 by 2. What you do to one side you have to do to the other. So I have x squared plus 4x plus 3 is equal to 0. And from here I'm good to go, and I could complete the square and also find the vertex. And I do have an entire playlist on how to complete the square, and I'd encourage you to go through all the exercises, all the examples I should say. Take about 30 minutes.